Hey Smithies, it's Grampy here again, and if you're wondering why I seem to have a bit of a halo behind me, it's really not a halo, it's my grow light, which is on a timer for the aloe plant and the other plant that I have back there. So that explains this glow behind me, okay? But I'm still stuck on this whole thing of gratitude. It just seems to keep coming up and up and up. In a slightly different context, though, my Bible reading program has me in the book of Numbers, and I came upon familiar ground there in chapter 11, where the children of Israel are in the wilderness, and they've been wandering for some time, and they're getting weary, they're getting fatigued. There's some murmuring and complaining that's starting to happen because they feel like it's going on too long, and they're getting tired of, their food and things like that. And so I was reminded of when this passage first sort of really came alive to me. I was in I think it was a time when I was in a very concentrated reading program with the Psalms. And in Psalm 106, it basically is a recounting of the whole journey, the calling of Israel and the journey through the wilderness and into the promised land. And there's a reference in here to what happens in Numbers 11. And I'll just read it. It's from Psalm 106. We'll just pick verse 10 and we'll go to verse 15. So this picks up when after they were brought through the Red Sea and the waters closed on their adversaries that were pursuing them. And it says that God saved them from the hand of him that hated them and redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. And the waters covered their enemies. There was not one of them left. Then believed they his words. They sang his praise. They soon forgot his works. They waited not for his counsel, but lusted exceedingly in the wilderness and tempted God in the desert. So that's this moment here. This is not that long after the deliverance from Egypt, but it says that they forgot what God had done for them, even though they were just, a short time earlier celebrating this amazing, miraculous deliverance. And it says that they tempted God in the desert, and he gave them their request. And that's what we're going to see today here in Numbers 11, that God did hear their complaints. He heard their cries, and he gave them their request. It says, but he sent leanness into their soul. And I remember when I read this, I'm like, I wonder about this, right? What is this talking about? And so I kind of dug in a little bit on it here and started thinking about it. So let's just read a little bit of the story here, okay? In verse 4 of Numbers 11, it says, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting or craving, right? And the children of Israel also wept again. So the complaining kind of caught fire, really. It was moving. That's kind of the way complaining is, right? We remember the fish which we had in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. And now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. So let's just pause here for a second. So what's going on? They've been brought out of the Red Sea deliverance, celebrated, but some time goes by and they start to feel some discomfort, right? Some deprivation, right? Despite the miracles, there are some aspects of their new life that aren't all that pleasant, right? And they're missing some pleasant things. And they recount what those are. We had fish, we had cucumbers and melons and leeks and onions and garlic. So they had some really robust, flavorful food, probably fairly readily accessible at hand. And those are yummy things, aren't they? However, there's a problem. And it says, now as our soul is dried away, there is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. Now, let's just make an observation and then an application, and then we'll kind of see what actually starts to happen here. First of all, to be among the covenant people of God doesn't mean that we always have the best of everything. It even means that we might have had some aspects of life from where we were delivered from that still kind of have some attraction, some fond identifications there, and that's just the reality. That's the allure of pleasure that we had to leave behind, right? So that means sin wouldn't be a temptation if there weren't some pleasure to it, right? So there are some aspects to the old life that might have a pull on us remaining, even though we've been brought out of it. And their general life condition was one of bondage. Their cry from their oppressors ascended up to heaven. So they have forgotten the bad parts, right? They're just kind of remembering the good parts that they wish they had. Not uncommon, but they're missing a crucial thing here. They're missing the fact that every day they are getting a miraculous provision of food. Right? Where do they think this comes from? It's not growing. They're not planting. All they do is go out every morning and they gather up their manna and they prepare it, they eat it, whatever. But it's there every day for them, right? And it's God doing this miraculously. And so many times we may be in a state of, let's just call it some kind of a wilderness, right? That things aren't all going the way we would have expected them to go. And there might even be aspects of our life in this place where we find ourselves that are hard. And yet, if we have eyes to see, we will see that God is in that very place providing for us miraculously. Now, this is not necessarily a great day for Moses either. He starts to complain. He's burnt out. So I'm thinking that the whole the weariness has caught up to everybody. And Moses, we're not going to go into it, but he kind of does his own complaining to God and basically says, God, I've had enough. I'm overwhelmed. Just take me out, right? And God concedes to Moses that, yes, Moses does need help. Now, he also concedes to the people. It says, so say to the people, he says to them, now we're in verse 18, to Moses, say to the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh, your meat. For you have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt, therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. So God's saying, okay, I've heard your complaining. I've noticed something else here, but I'm going to give you what you've asked for. Now remember our verse from Psalms, it says he gave them their request. That's this here. You shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20, but even a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils, and it is loathsome to you. Because here's the punch here. Because this is why God is giving them their request, and he's actually giving them like a painfully heavy dose of it, right? To where the savor of a good meal is lost because you've grown sick of it, eating it to the point for as long and for as much that it's described as coming out of your mouth, nostrils. Some of you know what that feels like. That's just like awful, right? Even if it's something good, there's a point where you just get sick of it. And he says, this is why I'm punishing you, right? I'm making you pay for this whining that you did before me, even though I was providing for you. He says, this is the punch here. He says, because you have despised not the manna, you have despised the Lord, which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why were we brought out of Egypt? And the key to contentment is to realize that it's more than just about, as the people of God, getting access to miraculous provisions or things like that. It's about the fact that we are the people of God and he is among us. And there's a spiritual, foreshadowing here. When, Jesus is talking there in his earthly ministry, he says there that I am the bread which came down from heaven. And in a very real sense, at least prophetically and in a foreshadowing way, this was God's provision, Christ, for them in the wilderness. And they despised it. And they missed the whole point that the essence of this whole new relationship that you've been called into is not about the stuff. It's about the person that is in your midst. Now, we're going to realize that sometimes then in our lives, we may be off target with some of our expectations or with even some prayer requests, and we need to be sensitive to how how we're bringing those to God and what we're sensing in our hearts as far as what His will is, because we do know that if we ask anything according to His will, we know that He hears us, and if He hears us, then we know that we have the thing that we've asked of Him. And so some of this process here, could be sifted out if we were just take the time and go to God with, like, hey, God, I'm getting weary here, right? I'm getting weary. Help, right? And rather than demanding you perform for me, because He just might, and then we're going to regret. We're going to regret it. And so we're going to, leave the book of Numbers here for now. But let's just jump back into this whole. What does it mean to have leanness of soul? Now, it does describe, there's other translations that translate this leanness of soul from Psalm 106 as a wasting disease. And that is what he did later here. And so, the direct connotation here of the Psalms is that he did punish them more than just the loathing of what they begged him for. He did send a harsher judgment to them for their complaining. But the whole key is that they were despising not just his provision, they were despising him. And I'll just wrap this up back. Again, we're going to find ourselves in Hebrews 13, where Hebrews and the book of James. Let's see. Okay, verse 5. Sorry for the pause there. Let your conversation or your behavior or your life be without covetous, this lusting, this craving for more or for what is forbidden. Envy is much like it. We've talked about that before here. Let it be without covetousness. And Paul comments on this and he says that covetousness is idolatry. It's the desiring of satisfaction from God or from a God that is of our own expectation, of our own creation. And so he says, be content with such things as you have. Now, we could tell the children of Israel, you guys just be content with what you have. But let's say that to ourselves. When we're feeling this sort of like lack or a wilderness sort of, weariness, let's be thankful for such things as we have, because he had said, I will never leave you or forsake you. And so you see the tie between Numbers 11 and Hebrews 13 here in this whole contentment and gratitude. Contentment with God provides, and a gratitude for the fact that he has promised us to never leave us nor forsake us. And he is that essential bread. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So that's our manna for this dad talk. And I hope that it just, again, helps affirm your your hearts and confirm your hearts in trust that the God who said he will never leave you, forsake you, is the God who provides, and his grace is that provision, and his grace is enough. God bless you guys.